welcome back to my channel. So we're back with another Remarried Empress recap, but this one we're gonna do it a little bit differently. We're just gonna go 2 chapters at a time. So I'll still have the chapters on the screen, so if you get confused, yeah, I might go and add timestamps to the other ones and this one. We'll see, because I got midterms on Monday, so we will. So let's get right into it. So starting off, chapter 41, Navier has a bit of a cold, so she's down for the count for a little bit. Then when she recovers, she's super tired because she has to deal with planning Rashta's pregnancy banquet. That's what she wants her to plan while he's off, visiting provinces as the emperor. But she's real tired of that. And she's having a discussion with her ladies in waiting, and this is where we're introduced to her brother, not in person, but in words. So Kozer, Trovi, was sent off to some form of battle at a border or something, and he is now coming back. Everybody's concerned what's gonna happen when he comes back because he's a bit of a troublemaker and a hothead. So everyone's real concerned about what's gonna happen when he finds out that Savishu not only has a mistress, but that mistress is pregnant. So Nadir is stressed out, child. She is stressed. She's like, oh my gosh, what is happening? What is going on? What am I gonna do? But then she decides that she's gonna, go to the banquet, like deal with the banquet first and then deal with him. Then she runs into Savishu after he comes back, and he is at first acting concerned, wondering if she's okay, because she's like sitting on a bench looking sick, because she probably has not healed fully, since whatever. But so he's wondering if she's okay, what she's doing, blah, blah, blah. Then he just completely goes into conversations regarding Rashta and the banquet and how basically having flashbacks of her and him being young and eating cookies, which will come up later. It will come up later. But those flashbacks are occurring during a conversation about how she should accept Rashta's child and treat the child as her own because one day it might be hers. Because what if they don't have a legitimate heir? Then this is gonna have to be the legitimate heir, and talking one back of politics and all of that stuff. But she gets upset and leaves. And that's the end of chapter 41. Then chapter 42 comes back with her thinking about what he said and just like completely getting irritated, and finally realizing that she's been so busy being sick and planning this banquet that she hasn't had time to actually, realize how lonely she is because all of her friends have left. Because remember, Henry went back to his sick brother because his brother is like chronically ill, probably only has a couple days left, and Duchess Tijuana left to go find that guy who essentially got banished because of her. Sort of. It was because of his actions for her. But yeah. So then we have Savishu talking to, I guess, his aide or somebody, and they're discussing the fact that Kozer is coming back, and Savishu is getting worried because, he could probably play around with his wife, but he's not finna be playing around with her brother. Yeah. So then we skip over to Grand Duke Hoffman coming and talking to Navier and essentially telling her that he's going to have to leave because of what happened with Savishu last time. There's no more trade agreements. All of the trade agreements hinge on having Savishu's consent, and he's definitely not going to give that now. And she's upset because she's the one that put in all of the hard work for this trade agreement. So what the hell? But anyways, then they go on to him basically asking her to come with him and like run away with him, and she's like, absolutely not. One, I have trained to be an empress my entire life. That is what I am. I will deal with whatever is going on. And he did mention one thing that I really like, and another thing with hindsight, because I'm up to date on this, one thing that I really, really don't like, but yeah, the one thing that I really like that he said is that it seems like a lot of her identity hinges on being the empress. So if at some point Savishu decides to divorce her, she will no longer be the empress, and he thinks she's going to have a breakdown, which I completely agree. I completely agree with that. I do think that she hinges a lot of her personality on being the empress, and puts a lot of false security in the fact that Savishu is going to stay with her, and I don't like that. Don't ever put any security in your place if it is dependent on somebody else. Always make sure that you carve out a space for yourself and it is inherently yours and does not depend on somebody else. A word. And second thing that he did that I don't like, the thing that he did that I don't like is the fact that she said that, remember you didn't like me at first, what happens if the love potion wears off and we're running away together? And he's like, no, it's not that I didn't like you, it's that I was frustrated on your behalf because of the situation, which Oh my gosh, it when we get to the point where we're like caught up, because it's 133 episodes right now. When we get to episode 133, or if you don't want to wait that long, there's a short recap on my TikTok. Oh my god, I am so irritated with Grand Duke Kaufman. But anywho, moving along. Basically, she denies it. He like goes and like hugs her, tries to say goodbye. Then he leaves. Kozair comes right after that, and this is after we see Kozair like walking around with his like, I don't know what they call the male version of a lady in waiting, but whatever that is who Kozair was walking around with, trying to find gifts for Navier because he loves his sister, and then he overhears some people gossiping about the fact that Sobishu's mistress is pregnant, and he's pissed. So he comes to the palace, all happy, smiles, everything, greeting his sister, putting down the gifts. So he's just like, oh my god, hey, how's it going? Nice to see you. Where's your bum ass husband? Where you at? Just personality completely changes, and Navier's like trying to distract him, like, oh my gosh, we can open the presents. He's like, the presents will always be here. Where is your husband and where is that mistress? But yeah, she tries to get her ladies in waiting to help her to open presents, and he's like, so this episode ends with him finding, like, I guess it was a draft invitation or an actual invitation to the banquet to celebrate the pregnancy, and Navier shook because she don't know what she going. In episode 43, we see Kozair still being upset about finding the invitation, and basically just like gives her a throwaway compliment about the hat that she's wearing and leaves. Then it transitions into a really sad episode because we get Henry and Krista, who is his brother's wife, standing beside the brother while he's on his unalived bed and is actively slipping away into the nether. And his brother is just like, listen, you're gonna have to get married. I need you to understand that. So Henry's just like, even on your unalived bed, because I don't know if I could say the D word, which is so stupid, but anyways, I don't know, like, even on your unalived bed, you're still speaking about affairs of the state. And he's like, listen, you just need to find somebody, you need to look for somebody who's good for the country. And Henry's just like, what if I find someone who's both good for me and the country? His brother's like, that would be ideal. That would be great. So I just need you to do two things for me. I need you to get married and have an heir. And I also need you to take care of your sister-in-law. Make sure nobody is disrespecting her. Which I think, again, with hindsight of everything that happens in like the later episodes, like, ooh, he was so sweet. He was so nice, because imagine the last things he's thinking of is the country that he's ruling and his wife. That is so sweet. But then he ends up dying. Oh my gosh, unaliving. Yes, right. There we go. He ends up, passing away. And we move on to Navier back, thinking through this whole banquet thing, wondering what she's gonna do, talking to her ladies in waiting in regards to what presents they're gonna get, making sure that they get good presents, because again, they are a representation of her, and she doesn't want to give off that. So she's walking around sad also at the fact that Henry's brother passed, because that is news that has reached their empire already. Then McKenna comes and visits her and gives her a letter from Henry, and then she sends another letter back and is like, oh, the only thing that I can offer you right now is condolences. And I'm like, girl, the only thing you can offer him more than condolences, ma'am. But anywho, she's walking around the palace next and walks past Viscount Latishu. Like, he, bows to greet her, and she like greets him and walks past and is just like, oh, he's been here quite often. Maybe he is actually blackmailing her. So then Viscount Latishu goes to see Rashta and essentially tells her that he needs more money, and she's like, I just gave you some. What do you mean by you need more? And he's just like, there's more than 2 people at this house that I acquired. And she's like, what do you mean that was not the agreement? Then we go into episode 44, where he's just like, yeah, there's more than 2 people at the place, essentially alluding to the fact that his son and daughter live there. So Rasha just like, yeah, that's not the agreement. What if they decide that they're gonna go around and talk? And he's like, ma'am, I just have to order them to not. Also, my son is not gonna be leaving his son's side. Like, this is his child. They're attached at the hip. He is not leaving him. I could not have kept him away even if I wanted to. And then he like mentions the name of the child, and she has like weird reactions. It's kind of half this baby's ruining my life, and then half, oh my gosh, I want to be a good mom. It's weird reactions. But he's asking her if she don't want to see the baby. She's telling him no, and then he basically like leaves, and she's having flashbacks to her being pregnant with that baby, and then what happened afterwards, and her saying, you know, like, this baby could potentially ruin my standing in this palace, but I also love it. So it's weird. It's a weird mixed bag of things. But then the time for the banquet comes through. Navier's still trying to figure out what her gift is, and then we see Henry busy with the coronation and funeral plans for himself and his brother, and he has a conversation with McKenna, wondering, you know, what is going on, because McKenna's mad that he's sending him to the Eastern Empire while he has all this work to do. But then Henry's like, I have work to do as well. I need to find a wife. And McKenna's like, you could find one here. And he's like, I don't want one here. You know which one I want. And McKenna's like, this one that you want is not available. And Henry's like, listen, I want what I want. Okay, I'm not trying to compromise. And I was like, yes, King, have your standards. But then we switch over to the banquet, and Rasha's there. She's excited. She greets Navier in such a backhanded way, and it's just like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited that you came. I didn't know you were gonna come, considering that this started an hour ago. And you can see Subishu real uncomfortable standing beside her. But Navier presents her with a gift, and it is a jewel encrusted sword. Yeah. Okay, so episode 45, we have the banquet, full swing, everything. Navier has given Rashta the gift of the sword, and then Rashta takes it upon herself to ask Navier to bless the baby. And Navier is just like, do you want me to bless the baby? Because it's going to be an empty blessing. So if you're okay with that, I'll do it. She starts walking away, and Rashta's like upset. So Subishu is like telling her, oh, you need to bless the baby, blah, blah, blah. So she comes back and is just like, you know what? My blessing to the baby is that it will have a life equivalent to the gift that I've given you. So Rashta's excited. Navier goes off to go, you know, like sit, chat, take her place at this banquet. And Subishu, I guess, walks away as well. Duke Urgi makes another appearance, and Rashta is telling him about how Navier blessed the baby. And Duke Urgi's like, what did she say? Like, what was the blessing? So she tells him, and then he asks to look at the sword, then basically tells her that the sword has like a bad meaning, something about how the sword is beautiful and extravagant, but it won't help you in battle. So essentially, she's blessing the baby to be useless. And she gets upset. Duke Urgi walks away. Subishu comes back, sees that she's upset, is wondering what's wrong. I guess one of her ladies in waiting fills him in on what happened, and he's just like, yeah, Duke Urgi should choose his words more wisely. So Rasha just like, no, he's just helping me not look like a fool. It's not his fault. It's the Empress's fault. Like, she's the one that insulted me in front of all of these people. Like, what are you gonna do about it? Like, she's out here insulting my child, who's gonna be like a future prince or princess. So Subishu starts getting upset and walks away and tells her that they should leave. And she's like, no, I can stay. I can face all of what is going on. But he still leaves, and she follows after him. And that's the end of that. Then episode 47. Child. Basically, Navier is sitting down with her ladies in waiting and is observing everything that's happening. So she sees Duke Urgi go and talk to Rashta, and she like smiles at him, which takes him off guard, and he like walks away. So we see that's why he actually leaves. Then she sees Subishu go and talk to her, and it's like a whole thing. Then they leave. So it then pans to Subishu and Rashta in a room, and he's basically explaining to her that whatever children they have will have like all of the benefits of being a child of a royal family, just without a title, because you are not the empress. Your children will have like all the riches and power and whatever, blah blah blah, but they will not have the title of prince or princess. So don't be going around saying that the baby that you're having is going to be a prince or princess, because that's not the case. She is mad, and I'm like, I don't understand why you're upset, because your child will have a life leagues better than yours. Leagues better. Just because they won't be called prince or princess does not mean that their life will not have, like, they won't have a grand life. Their quality of life is going to be so much better than yours. They will be high regarded nobles. But anyways, he leaves. She stays in the room crying. Her lady in waiting is trying to comfort her in the worst possible way. The worst possible way. Because I don't understand how you're going to try to comfort that lady over some foolishness that she's upset about in the first place. Because she's mad that, oh, if Navier has kids, then my kids will be looked at as inferior just because they don't have the same titles. Like, they're gonna have their pride hurt because their younger sibling is gonna have titles and whatever, even though they're going to technically be of the same standing, because Sojuu just said they will be treated as members of the imperial family, whatever. So then the lady in waiting tries to comfort her by saying, "Oh, your child might actually have this standing. Like, you don't have to worry because it seems like the Empress is infertile. It's been years since she's come of age and they haven't gotten pregnant, but you got pregnant right away. So, she might just be an adoptive mother to your kid and your kid will get the titles anyways." And I'm like, that's not how. Why would you try to comfort her by saying, "Oh yeah, your competition is probably infertile"? And then why did she take that as a comfort? Well, anyways, then we move on to Navier and Kozer walking with, I guess, Kozer's man in waiting. We're gonna call him man in waiting. So Navier and Kozer were walking around with Kozer's man in waiting. Oh my gosh, y'all. They run into Rashta. She comes up, hot, heavy, confronting Navier, and is basically talking out the side of her mouth, saying, "Oh, I know you were insulting me there. I know that your gift and your blessing didn't mean anything, and it was just an insult. But for the sake of my children, I'm gonna take the high road every time you insult me." And Navier's like, "What the hell are you talking about?" And she's like, "The Savishu has already told me that you're infertile, and you're probably just gonna serve as an adoptive mom from all of the kids that I have." All of the kids that I have, y'all. Anyways, you're just gonna serve as an adoptive mom to all of the kids that I have. So basically, for the sake of my children, I'm just gonna make your insults roll off my back. And Navier's like, "Girl, what?" So she starts popping off at Navier, and Kozer's just like, "What the hell did you just say?" Like, he jumps in front of his sister, like between them, does not touch her. And it's just like, "What the hell did you just say?" And she like gets startled and I guess falls to the ground because he was shouting at her. But then Navier and his man in waiting like walk him away, and she starts screaming about her stomach and how it's in pain. Yeah. Episode 47 is essentially just the aftermath of what happened after Rashta fell to the ground and started crying. The guards dragged Kozer off, and he basically threatened her, like, "If you said that my sister is infertile again, I'm gonna cut your tongue out," all of that stuff, man. And then Rashta is essentially looking to Navier for help, and Navier is just like, she got a hell of a lot of people around her. She don't need help from me. So she goes. Then we see Rashta and Savishu talking after the doctor has examined her, and she's basically trying to lie to him and tell him a bunch of stuff about how Navier was being mean first, and he was just like, Navier's very aware of her reputation around other people. She's not going to do that. I find that hard to believe. So then she's just like, "Oh, it's only me that can protect me and my baby." So she lies and says that Kozer shoved her. And Savishu essentially took that. He didn't really trust her, but I think he just doesn't like Kozer, so he essentially banned Kozer from the palace. So we see Navier and Kozer talking about, how Kozer needs to walk on eggshells around her because she is not as stupid as he might think. She's not just a mistress. She clearly has some intelligence because she was a part of Duchess Tuana's divorce and all of that. She's been doing some shady stuff. So you need to be careful. Then I guess we see Kozer getting the ban. So he is banned from the palace. He's outside at a tavern drinking with his man in waiting, and then they essentially formulate a plan to find some way to get back at Rashta, and it might include her bill of sale, but So then episode 48 is essentially a huge misunderstanding happening after Navier gets some correspondence from Henry. We did see a little bit of Henry like taking up for Lady Krista, because remember she's like there essentially. Henry's brother not there anymore, so she's not queen anymore. Somebody was telling her that, and Henry stepped in, unimportant. But we see him sending McKenna over and giving Navier a letter, and it's just like, "Hey, I want you to head the delegation to come to my coronation because I'd really like you to be there." But she's interrupted by her ladies in waiting, essentially giving her the tea that somebody had mixed some baby no more drugs into Rashta's food. So essentially the doctor had to come check her out again, and Savishu is upset because he thinks that Kozer is the one that did it. So he's talking to the guy, I guess his hand, I don't know, but he's talking to that guy and essentially saying how he thinks Kozer did it, and he thinks that Navier is involved because Navier is too smart to not know what Kozer is up to, which she is busy running the country, so she don't have time to be babysitting her brother. But yeah, he calls Navier in to refuse to see her. He summons her to refuse to see her and have her waiting in the room. And he's just like, oh, she's not waiting in the room. She must have gone because she doesn't do anything that would hurt her bride. Then he goes outside and sees her still in the damn room and essentially charges her with the investigation. Like, he puts her in charge of the investigation to find out who laced Rasta's food with the baby no more stuff. Yeah. And then tells her that if she finds out that it's her brother, then he expects her to come and apologize in person. And the way that man talks about her, and like to her, about and to her, when she's there and when she's not there, shows you that he don't like her. He does not like that lady, because you cannot claim to even like someone or be cordial with them and behave like that. He has a sour, disgusting attitude, and I hate it. Episode 49 has Navier investigating, and by investigating, she's asking Kozer's hand, essentially, if he's what did it, and he's trying not to tell her that Kozer is the one that actually did it, but he's basically telling her these cryptic messages like, hey, there's light and there's darkness, don't go try looking for answers in the shadows, and I was like, bars. Bars. But anyways, she essentially figures out that it was Kozer that did it and tells them, hey, stop doing that. Y'all are making things weird for me in the castle. Like, please stop. So then she goes and reports to Savishu, and he essentially tells her that she doesn't have to apologize. He just said it in the heat of the moment, and he'll bury these incidents because he wants to protect her. But keep in mind that if something like this happens again, he's going to choose to protect his child, which I can't fault him for, but the way how he was acting before, completely disgusting. But anyways, moving along. He goes and sees Rashta and is essentially like checking up on her, and she wakes up and she's just telling him, hey, I figured that the person who did it might have their like back against the wall and they're stuck in a corner, that's why they did it, but you need to protect our child. You need to protect our child over everyone else. And that's how that ends. Then the next episode, episode 50, essentially starts off with Henry looking at some correspondence. I don't know where he got this correspondence from, but it was some intel on the Eastern Empire and how their mages are waning. They have like very little and they can't really keep up the magic in the Empire anymore, and he's smirking. But McKenna comes back with the news that Navier is busy and cannot, attend the coronation. She can't lead the delegation. So he tells McKenna that he could get 10 extra days off of flying up and down, but he wants him to send another message to the Eastern Empire, but this time to Duke Urgi. So I'm like, interesting. So then we get to a part where Rashta is sitting and like accepting guests or something. I don't know, it looks like a social event, but the guest that is introduced to her is Labetty, Viscount Lottishue's daughter. So she recognizes her and like gives her the dirtiest look. But then her brother Alan drags her away. Then Rashta is upset and decides that she wants to go like take a walk to cool down, but she leaves the room and finds Alan waiting for her in the hallway. So he's essentially like apologizing to her about everything that's going on and saying that his dad said he should pretend that he doesn't know her in public, and he knows that she bought the baby a mansion in the capital and he is happy about that, and he's like trying to apologize for not standing up for her or their love and their relationship and choosing to stay rich and be a noble over being broke and being with her. Yeah. So then she tells him off and walks away and is reminiscing about how wonderful it feels to tell off someone she used to call young master and how great it feels and blah, 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 but she does feel bad for being harsh towards the baby. Then she goes back to, I don't know if it's her room or Duke Urgi's room, but she goes into a room and Duke Urgi is in there cursing because he had just gotten the correspondence from McKenna and was reading it, but she didn't see. So she's asking him about it. He's just like, oh, forget you saw that. It's okay. It's just my friend being crazy. What's going on? And she is talking to him about what happened with Alan just now, and then essentially how she told Savishu, just catching him up on the tea, about how she told Savishu that he needs to take care of the baby, but she's already decided that she's the only one that can take care of herself and the baby. So he said, yeah, there's two ways you can do that. You can either ask Savishu for help, or you can attack your enemies before they can attack you. So she's like, I don't know how I'm going to be able to do that because my enemy is already of higher standing than me and has more money and a better reputation than me. And I don't know how I'd get rid of her. And Duke Urgi's just like, hey, you're talking about the Empress, aren't you? And she's like, yeah, I am. Like, I thought that she would have been nice to me. Again, you are screwing her husband. But anywho, she's like, yeah, I thought everybody praises her, so I thought she'd be nice to me, but I actually hate her and she scares me, so I want to get rid of her. So Duke Urgi's just like, the only way you can get rid of her is becoming the Empress yourself. And that's how that ended. episode 51 was essentially Duke Urgi laying out a plan for Rashta, saying, hey, you can just pretend, like find some nobles that can pretend to be your parents so that you can get rid of that whole noble lineage thing so that the nobles accept you, but for the commoners, you need to relate to them like you were a commoner before. You need to really play that up and make them feel like you relate to them because you were a commoner before, just like them. So you get the commoners and nobles as the same, because I guess the council that has to decide new empresses are half commoner, half noble, so she can play both sides essentially and get her goal of becoming the empress. And she's just like, isn't that difficult? And he's like, yeah, it would be difficult, but empresses change a lot more often than you would think. It's not a very stable role. So they start talking about that. Then we move to Savishu essentially getting someone is coming and talking to him about how Viscount Lotishu is getting some suspicious people on his property asking about Rashta's heritage and how the nobles aren't really warming up to her, and she's asking about etiquette classes within the palace. So he's like, yeah, get her the best teacher that you can. And then he starts openly worrying about how she might lose some charm if she learns etiquette. And I'm like, you just don't like how refined she is. You want her to be the exact opposite of Navier. Dumb, delusional, and gullible. That is exactly what you want. But anyways, aside from him being disgusting, we have Duke Urgi being somewhat disgusting, somewhat interesting, when he runs into Navier at the end of the chapter and asks if he can walk with her, and basically asking her what she thinks about Rashta and how it's terrible to bully people who are weaker than you. And she's just like, I'm not bullying anybody, but if somebody comes at me with a knife, I'm not just gonna hold my hands behind my back and wait for them to stab me just because they're weaker than me, sir. So then he's just like, oh, blah blah blah. And she's like, yeah, no, if someone is coming and attacking you, are you just gonna fold your hands behind your back and have them attack you? No, like that don't make no sense. So he's like, oh my gosh, like, could you just hit me so I feel less guilty? And when he said that, I knew that he was giving Rashta this advice. Him and Henry are working together, and he's giving Rashta this advice. And I don't really know how that makes me feel a little bit, because it's kind of weird. I think Henry is manipulating the situation to get Navier out of there and be his wife. But that's a little... On one hand, I don't like that. I don't like the manipulation to get what you want. But on the other hand, he would not have any footing to do so if Savishu hadn't brought a mistress in and started treating his wife like absolute garbage. But anyways, that's the end of episode 51. Episode 52 comes in with Navier also having the same thoughts as us, like, oh, Henry and Duke Urgi are probably working together. That's weird. That's suspicious, but we move. She has other things to deal with. So then we have Viscount Lotishu reminiscing about how his life is so great because he's living in a mansion in the capital. He has a healthy son and daughter who are well and obedient, and he has Rashta, who is essentially his cash cow, and he can blackmail her into giving him all the money he wants. So all he would need is for his wife to get better and join him in this opulence. But then he's disrupted by Rashta's child crying because Alan, the father, is taking care of the child. And he's just like, you need to go and like make friends with some nobles. You need to stop taking care of that kid. All of this, blah, 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 blah. And he's just like, you need to get ready for Labetty to make her debut into society because that's the next thing on the go. That's what we're waiting on. So Alan is just like, listen, she gonna do what she wants and it's gonna be fine. Don't worry about it. Then Labetty comes running in and screaming and is just like, oh my gosh, I have a meeting with the Empress, blah, 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 and I'm so excited. Immediately, Viscount Lotishu goes and tells Rashta. And Rashta is upset. She is mad. She's like, why is she meeting with Labetty? She's trying to dig up dirt on me, blah, blah, blah. Make sure that Labetty can't say anything. So Viscount Lotishu is just like, yeah, of course. But in return, you need to give me a dress of the finest fabric and the finest gems for Labetty's debut. And she's like, what the hell? And he's like, listen, I have multiple people in the palace that can expose your secret. Don't try me. Don't do anything. Just do what I tell you to do. This is a mutually beneficial agreement. So she agrees. It gets to where Navier and the ladies in waiting are getting ready for Labetty to visit, and her lady in waiting is just like, oh, I thought that, they probably, oh my god, no. Her guard says, hey, Viscount Lotishu just visited Rashta, and then the ladies in waiting were just like, oh, probably warning her and warning Labetty that they shouldn't say anything. So Navier is just like, listen, I don't need to ask that girl anything. Her coming here is the warning. That is it. Her coming here is the warning. That is the plan. All she needs to do is arrive and show up. that is a warning in itself. So then Lobeti comes. Lobeti's thinking, oh, the Empress would never do anything like that because she's thinking back on when her dad was just like, if she asks about Rashta, don't say anything. So the meeting goes as planned. Navier does not bring up Rashta. Lobeti is happy, blah, blah, blah. She's leaving. And one of Navier's ladies in waiting is just like, oh, she didn't really say much. Like, you know, she seemed super nervous when she came in, but she seemed so smitten when she was leaving. And Navier just like, don't worry. She said enough. Don't worry about it. And that's the end of episode 52. Okay, so Lobeti runs into Rashta. Oh, episode 53. Lobeti runs into Rashta outside, and Rashta is just like, what did you tell Her Majesty? Did you tell her anything? And she's just like, listen, we did not talk about you, like, at all. We have no reason to. And they trade insults, and Rashta slaps Lobeti across the face. Smacks her clean across the face. And Lobeti was about to slap her back, but then she held herself back and walked away. So Rashta started worrying about, you know, what was she going to do? Is she going to tell the Viscount, blah, blah, blah. Then Savishu and Navier are having dinner, and he's basically telling her about how he knew that she had some ladies over for tea, and blah, blah, blah. She has a tea party coming. But then he moves straight into matters of state, which is the declining mage. The declining mage population. And we find out why that's bad, because apparently the number of mages in an empire directly correlate to how powerful that empire is. So the fact that theirs are declining is a huge issue. But I don't know why he stopped talking about this matter to give her like some sort of ring that she doesn't really have much of a reaction to. And he's just like, his whole exterior, like his whole personality just went cold after that. He kept telling her, hey, I want to see you smile like before and all of that. So I think that what he is missing is like younger Navier who didn't really have much responsibilities. But when you are shouldering all of the responsibility in a relationship, it really does bring down your mood. You don't really go about smiling and feeling frivolous when you know that you are carrying this entire relationship and this empire on your shoulders because your husband is doing absolutely nothing. Yeah, so he gets mad at her for not like falling over her feet over a ring when she's the Empress. She has a lot of jewelry, a lot of rings always come through. You are also not giving her any reason to think that this is a romantic gesture, but anyways, whatever. Then we get into Rashta sulking because she's trying to pick a dress for Lobeti, but she's trying to make sure that she doesn't pick one too pretty because she doesn't even want to be giving Lobeti a handkerchief. But she's getting mad at the dressmaker. The dressmaker's confused as hell because she's just like, what do you want? Do you want it fancy? Do you not want it fancy? Pretty? No, what's going on? Then she sends her away, and some of her ladies in waiting come in, including Delise. And if you are where I am, yeah. Anyways, so Delise is just like, hey, found out that Your Majesty is having a tea party. So she's like, why are you telling me this? She's probably not going to invite me. She might only invite me just to make sure she don't look cold. Like, ugh, I can't. But that's essentially the end. Nothing really happens with that other than her just thinking about getting an invitation to the tea party. Okay, so episode 54 starts off with Duke Urgi and Rashta talking about basically her plan, because she's there crying to him about how the Empress is trying to make her a social pariah because she didn't invite her to the tea party and blah blah blah. And Duke Urgi's just like, oh, she can't get away with bullying you. What you should do though is make your own tea party, like hold your own tea party on the same day as her and make it seem like you were gonna hold it first and she did it just to spite you. Because Rashta was just like, oh, I don't think anybody would come to my tea party over hers because she's the Empress, blah blah blah. So essentially that's the plan that they were gonna make and spread some rumors about it as well. So next is Lobeti coming to visit the Empress and them going on a walk, and they run into Rashta and Navier, petty as hell. I disagree with this, by the way. She was just like, oh yeah, like Duke Urgi is like, oh, who is this? And she's just like, oh, this is just a delightful young lady that I've met and have been acquainted with for so long, but she seems so sweet and nice. I see her as like a little sister, so if it's not too forward, you can call me big sister. And the look on Rashta's face, yikes on rice. Like, it was bad. I disagree with this. I think it was a little petty and hurtful, but again, that lady is screwing your husband, so it be like that, I guess. So then we move on to Kozer out and about at a tavern, since he can't go and visit his sister because he's banned from the palace, hearing someone spreading rumors about how Navier is being petty and trying to spite Rashta because she decided that she was going to have a tea party on the same day, even though Rashta was trying to have a tea party before. and how it seems like Navier is being rude to Rashta, and how the only victim here is Rashta because she's a commoner. It's not like she set out to become His Majesty's mistress, and how it is His Majesty's fault for being so weak-willed, and then Navier is taking out all of her anger on the wrong person, Rashta, when she should be taking it out on Savishu. So he tells his hand that. His hand goes and tells Navier, and it's just like, hey, what do you want to do? Do you want to do opposing rumors? And she's like, no, it would be like cutting my nose off to spite my face. Like, really, I don't want any more turmoil that can be seen as discord in the palace, because then that's going to trickle about and cause just anarchy, because it doesn't seem like we're presenting a uniform front, which is true, which is what Grand Duke Hoffman said before. But anyways, she's like, yeah, like, even in this whole weird little battle that me and Rashta are having, I do have to think about the Empire and its people above all, because I am the Empress. So that's essentially how that's going there. There was not really any resolution. They just kind of figured that maybe it was Duke Urgy doing all of this, because the fact that the guy was so willing, the guy who was gossiping was so willing to speak bad about Savishu, it definitely points towards Duke Urgy, because he's a foreigner. So they deemed the whole situation as dangerous and then kind of close out from there. Well, episode 55 basically starts out with Henry's coronation, and it's going well, blah, blah, blah. Then him and McKenna are debriefing, and they talk about how the delegate from the Eastern Empire came to Henry and was just like, oh my gosh, you must really be missing Lady Rashta right now, and you would be so hurt finding out how horribly the Empress is treating her. And I'm like, sir, that is not what you went there for. That, my God, listen, when I tell you, I remember making a TikTok about it, and I was just like, the people of the Eastern Empire gossip so damn much, and the nobles are terrible at it. Like, all they're doing is going and gossiping. Like, you don't have stuff to do. Like, you are essentially doing a job right now. Poorly, but you're doing a job right now. But anyways, child. Anyways, so Henry's talking about essentially how he's gonna get Navier to be his queen, because they're planning on going to war. We find that out. We find out that Henry is planning to bring the Western Kingdom into war with the Eastern Kingdom, and he doesn't want Navier to be his queen after that war, because any way you look at it, his kingdom and subjects are going to look at it as he went to war over Navier, and they're going to resent her. So he's trying to figure out the best way to get her to be his queen without having his entire kingdom resenting her and thinking that, he did foolishness to get her. So they talk about it, they kind of figure out something. He sends McKenna over with like a letter and a ring, essentially, telling her, hey, I wanted you to have this, I want you to be my queen, I like you, blah, blah, blah. Just, showing his affection towards her. And then she tells him about the debutante ball that they're having, and then tries to put a smile on his face, sends something back to McKenna, and goes. So it's almost time for the debutante ball. Rashta's still trying to find a dress for Betty, and it's just like, oh, why are all of these people so talented? Essentially, they're making such pretty dresses. And then she thinks back on when she had copied Navier's red dress for that other ball, and was just like, oh, I'll do the same thing with Betty. So she gives Delise the measurements, and it's just like, hey, just get the same dress as mine, but in smaller size. Here's the measurements. And Delise is just like, oh, you're gonna give her the same dress as you? And she's just like, yeah, I think my dress is the prettiest, and I wouldn't want to get her one that's less pretty. And Delise is just there, falling head over heels, thinking that this lady is so kind and nice, when she's actually a conniving itch. But yeah, Delise gonna find out later. Wait till we get there. It's gonna be like a good couple hundred episodes past, but wait till we get there, because I think we're at episode 138 or something, but we're at the 50th, so we're getting there. But yeah, she gives her the measurements, gets the dress, blah blah blah. It comes to the debutante ball. Navier comes in looking gorgeous. She goes, sits down. People are talking about how her style of dress is going to be worn to balls after this, whatever. Delise comes in, Navier waves at her, and then Rashta comes in the same dress, and people start gossiping about how, maybe Rashta had copied Delise, because this is the second time this is happening, but they're like, why would she copy the daughter of a minor viscount from the countryside? So then Navier goes in, gives Delise like a part of her, I think like her little petticoat thing from her dress, and everybody's just like, oh, Navier knows what to do in these situations. That was so nice of her to turn things around before they become ugly. But Navier turns around and sees Rashta scribbling in this little notebook. So she's like, oh, what is she planning? Blah, blah, blah. That's the end. Okay, y'all, I think I'm going to stop here for now. I'm going to try to power through some more sometime, whenever I get some more time to film, because my time is few and far between right now. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.